What if no one takes a stand? What if one action, so simple, could have changed an entire time period, could have prevented a genocide, and ultimately altered the course of history as we know it? Neville Chamberlain's appeasement of Adolf Hitler was the first domino in a catastrophic downfall of Allied powers in World War II.
At the beginning of the 1930s, the United Kingdom had suffered an event similar to the Great Depression, known as the Great Slump. It was the largest depression in Britain's economic history within the 20th century. Most issues had been due to the cost of World War I, but when the stock market crashed in 1929, so did Britain's economy. Unemployment rates were low, the industries had lost a third of what it originally produced, and trade had decreased by half. In order to break loose from the Great Slump, Britain let go of its gold standard, an exchangeable form of money, and switched to the use of the pound, making them more competitive economic-wise as a country. Neville Chamberlain went into office in 1937 as Britain's Prime Minister. Before that, he had a lot of experience in financial management as Britain's Chancellor of Exchequer for 6 years. Going into office, his main goal was to reform any issues in the workforce. He soon passed the Factories Act of 1937, which limited the hours that children or women could work. Positive or negative, his work inside the country had come to a halt due to foreign conflicts with Germany.
A few years before Chamberlain's election in 1937, Hitler had been appointed as the Chancellor of Germany on January 30th of 1933, and only about a month later he began to assemble forces of SS and SA officers. These were the defense troops and stormtroopers of the neo-Nazi Germany. The new Chancellor also created the Gestapo, or police force. This was only the beginning of Hitler's Germany. Shortly after, concentration camps were established. Central camps such as Buchenwald, Dachau, Sachsenhausen, and so on. Germany's fate was sealed in 1933 when the German parliament signed the Enabling Act, handing Germany into Hitler's hands and beginning the terror that was the Holocaust. Hitler's reign of terror grew in intensity more so after the death of the prior Führer, Paul von Hindenburg. Over the next 5 years, Jewish citizens of Germany began losing rights left and right. One of the most significant events being the Nuremberg race laws of 1935. This series of 29 laws forbade any Jews from marrying or having any sexual relations with any Aryans. Aryans referring to any German with blonde hair and blue eyes. Next, Germans denied Jews the ability to be or become a German citizen. Then, they legally defined Jews as a separate race, using patches like these to identify Jews. Along with this, other regulations for occupations were created, and so on. This also led to the law for the protection of the genetic health of the German people, which required interracial couples to be medically tested for diseases before they could acquire a marriage license. The Holocaust had infected all of Germany's territory, and its severity grew with every Jewish death. Hitler's army was growing exponentially, and in an effort to recruit more German warriors, Hitler attempted to coax a portion of Czechoslovakia, known as Sudetenland, which was home to nearly 3 million German immigrants, to reunite with their motherland.
At this time, Britain controlled a lot of territory, including Czechoslovakia, along with France and the Soviet Union. In 1938, Benito Mussolini, French Edouard Daladier, and Neville Chamberlain signed the Munich Pact, virtually handing over the country to Hitler and his army. Neville had met privately with Hitler in Berchtesgaden, Hitler's mountaintop retreat, to discuss the possibility of the pact before the conference. Within their discussion, Chamberlain was persuaded that the territory gained was not unreasonable and convinced that Hitler was nothing less than a gentleman. Chamberlain then continued to convince the French Edouard Daladier and author Benito Mussolini to sign the pact, handing over Sudetenland to Hitler. Due to the new land gain, Hitler obtained 66% of Czech's coal, 70% of their iron and steel, and 70% of their electrical power. on top of 3 million Germans. It left the rest of the country weaker and open to take over. Eventually being terrorized by Germany, Czechoslovakia was forced to surrender the rest of the country, which included Bohemia, Moravia, Slovakia, and Carpatho-Ukraine. This was a defiance of the pact because Germany was only given Sudetenland, not the rest of Czechoslovakia. Hitler had set up pro-Nazi regimes as military and political bases within their newly gained territory. Soon enough, Czechoslovakia no longer existed at all. It became another land dominated by German forces.
Originally, when Chamberlain had signed the Munich Pact, he returned home thinking he had prevented conflict between Germany and the United Kingdom. Upon his return, Neville set up the meeting of powers. There, he stated, "I believe that it is peace for our time, peace with honor." The agreement Neville had signed forced the Sudetenland to cede to Germany, increasing the army size and Hitler's support base. All he did was increase the power of Nazi Germany with supplies, militia, and territory. Little did he know he was aiding his enemy. In March 1939, due to the defiance of the Munich Pact, Britain and Poland created an Anglo-Polish military alliance. And in August 1939, both Soviet and Nazi forces signed the Soviet-Nazi Pact, agreeing to peace and non-aggression. In September 1939, Hitler and his army invaded Poland, only a year after the Munich Pact had been signed. Embarrassed, Chamberlain finally declared that there was a state of war between Germany and Britain.
The first event between the Germans and the United Kingdom was in September 1939, when Germany's U-30 submarine sunk a British ocean liner known as Athenia, a ship carrying mostly immigrants and passenger traffic. 112 people lost their lives. 28 were American, however, Roosevelt chose to not intervene. The next conflict was in Norway over the possibility of establishing naval bases that would be beneficial to both Germany and to the United Kingdom. Norway had allowed Britain to plant mines, however, the German and French pressure was too much to handle, and Germany ultimately won. The Norwegian crisis had led to a vote against Britain's confidence in Chamberlain. By September of 1939, Winston Churchill had already been making reforms as a member of the War Cabinet, and on May 10, 1940, Churchill was appointed as Prime Minister due to Chamberlain's weak leadership in the Norwegian crisis. Churchill made serious reforms that ended up helping create a peace settlement with the Soviet Union and America against Germany. The Holocaust tortured an entire race of people, killing millions. Chamberlain not only allowed for it to happen, but also aided Hitler initially with supplies and military from Czechoslovakia. Besides soldiers dying in combat, a good portion of deaths came from the concentration camps and the torture of Jews, killing up to 6 million people. People were pulled from their houses against will, children and women included.
I'll never forget this because I saw this happening. I ran out to see what's going on. They grabbed the baby by the feet and smashed the head against the door post. Because the brains, everything just cracked open. The child died, obviously, and the mother was screaming. And they started beating the mother up with the clubs of the rifles. It was something unbelievable. You couldn't fathom that people would do such a thing.
Many were placed into killing centers for the mass murder of Jews, many of which were placed in gas chambers. At some camps, 6,000 Jews were killed a day, but before death they would be put into labor in extremely rough conditions. And until Churchill's actions, no one in the United Kingdom strived for change within Europe. Instead of standing up to a stronger, more intimidating force and helping the course of history for the greater good of mankind, Chamberlain decided to allow for the persecution and killing of millions all out of fear. Fear for his nation, fear for his reputation, and fear of a greater enemy. Bravery can save many lives, but fear takes them. So what happens when no one takes a stand? Nothing good can come if no one stands for change. This is our world and what we make of it. So why fill it with terror and brutality? Why not stand up for life?